And now joining me here on March Madness, Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director from Kentucky, but for 2021, the NCAA men's basketball tournament selection committee chair. And Mitch, on Monday, the venues were announced. We kind of knew that it was going to be in the state of Indiana, but that became official. 6 venues. I know we'll learn more about dates and more details later, but Lucas Oil Stadium, 2 floors, not at the same time. Bankers Life, Hinkle, historic building, the fairgrounds where the Horizon League holds its tournament, and then Indiana and Purdue. So Assembly Hall and Mackey Arena. My understanding they would be more day trips, but using those venues as well. So just if you can, from the committee standpoint, what went into the thought process of keeping it in the state of Indiana and choosing those venues?
Well, first of all, player and coach safety. Trying to make sure that we created a healthy environment for student athletes and coaches, and then all the people that are working the tournament. And that's a monstrous task, as you know, on a lot of people's parts. So bringing everybody into a safe environment, trying to make sure we have the best opportunity possible to put together the field of 68 and put together a start to finish tournament where we are able to crown a national champion. So that was most important. We felt like the controlled environment gave us the best chance to do that. And the state of Indiana is no stranger to putting on big events, Final Fours, and has an ability with an infrastructure in place in all of the NCAA offices right there for us to be able to service it and give it the best chance to succeed.
And so these venues, this is going to be a once in a lifetime event. We hope, to do it all in one place. But, Hinkle, Indiana, Purdue, the old fairgrounds. Obviously, we know about Lucas Oil and Baker's Life, but what do you think about incorporating some of those more historic Indiana venues?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really unique. I think this is one of those when players and coaches go back and they get the reunion in 20 years, they're going to say, "Do you remember we were the team that did this?" And and I think there's so much history at those facilities, and it's going to be completely different than anything we've done in the past. But I think it's also a really cool opportunity. We don't want to obviously get in the habit of doing it every year. If that's a future committee's decision, obviously. But I think that obviously we'll go back to normal after this. But for this year, and this time, it's a completely unique opportunity for experiences that young people will never see again. And those facilities, we got incredible history, and we want to make sure we honor that the right way and combine that with the incredible tradition of college basketball and the NCAA tournament. And I think it could be a really magical story in a lot of different ways.
All right, so let's shift to the net rankings because you got to get there. And the way you get there is you're selected by your committee. And so the net rankings came out for the first time on January 4th, that being Monday. And some interesting numbers, but at the same time, I think also predictable based on the results we've seen. Now we know, and you said this, and Dan Gavin has said this. Your head coach, Don Calipari, has said this many times, said this to me on a Zoom early in the preseason. It was not going to be an equitable season. We know that some teams were going to play more games than others, and some were going to get more non-conference opportunities than others. But right off the top, it equates to the poll. Gonzaga is number 1, and no other team really has gone out and scheduled and played high-profile games more than the Zags. So right off the bat, Gonzaga number 1, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, clearly they're an incredible team. We've had an opportunity to watch them early on, and they, as you said, they scheduled a difficult schedule. They've got some players that are playing at an incredibly high level, and obviously the net speaks for itself, and it says they're right now they're the number 1 team in the college basketball, and so. A lot of work to do. You mentioned it really, really important. The January ranking is going to have you can have some teams that haven't played 5 games yet. Then you've got some teams that have played almost 10 or 12 games. And so the rankings at this point in time, probably not a lot of relevance in terms of the numbers in there, but realizing the more information, the more that goes into the pot, the better the metrics will end up being. The data does not include preseason data. Some of the metrics in today's world have preseason data put in there. So whether you've got like Ken Palm, BPI, some of those have some preseason data in there. The net does not have that. So The data will get better as we go, and it'll filter out. But I don't think there's any mistaking. The Zags certainly deserve to be at the top of the leaderboard.
And I'll tell you, Mitch, for the most part, as I looked at sort of the top 15, it has, for the most part, mirrored a top 25. I mean, Gonzaga, Baylor, Tennessee, Illinois, Villanova, Michigan, Iowa, Houston, Texas, Missouri, Wisconsin, St. Louis. Maybe they're a little higher than they, compared to the polls. Boise, which has had a great start, and maybe a little higher at 13. Same with Colorado, and then Clemson. So really, if you go to the top 11, all those schools in some form or fashion have had really good non-conference conference starts, have been ranked in the top 20. And so, I think by waiting till January, we actually can see that it does somewhat mirror, for the most part, what we've seen on the court.
Well, that, and I think the other thing is really important. Had we started November 25th, so it was really difficult at that point in time to really do much early in December. And then the other thing I think that is we're nervous about how many games were being played. We're playing 75 to 80% of the games that are scheduled. Now, that's not perfect. It's not 100%. I don't have the actual day number. We've been mid-December, late December, we were in that 75, 80% range. I think we're holding true to that. And if we can continue to do that, we'll get a really good resume for most of the teams. And if you think about a 27-game schedule and getting 80% of that, you're right about 22 games. So if we can find a way to get each team in that zone where they're getting a number of games played, 18 to 22, now you've got a really good resume to be able to gain information out of the metrics, realizing that the committee is going to have a real task at hand as they begin to look at video and have conference monitoring, phone calls, other tools in our toolbox besides just the metrics that are on the team sheet.
Yeah, and by conference, the Big Ten and SEC both had 5, Pac-12 3, Big 12 3, and ACC 2 within the top 25. And once again, you could argue, okay, should the Big Ten have more than that? Maybe. But other than that, I don't think it's crazy outside the lines here in terms of where we are. What about the road weight, if you will? How do you think it is weighted? How do you think the committee will view it? I think personally that there's still going on the road is going on the road. While yes, we don't have the Cameron crazies, but Michigan State and Illinois still had to go physically travel to Duke. And in a pandemic, traveling is not easy. You know that, of course, as an athletic director. So where do you weigh in terms of the road win?
Yeah, I don't think we've got that totally in terms of the metric piece. That's something we're not going to be able to figure that out at this point in time. We're going to have to think about that as a committee, as how that plays out. A road win, as you said, I'll go to our venue, 21,000 in Rupp Arena. There's 2,000 in there right now. So that's where we are. So it's not the same venue that you would play in, but you still have to test before you go. You still have to get on a plane. You're still socially distant. You still have to go in there and play at a place you're unfamiliar with against an opponent who knows that facility well. So finding the balance in that conversation will be really, really important. That's something the committee's working its way through right now. Clearly, some of the TVI has been talking about the quality of the opponent. Who did you schedule and how was the quality of that opponent? Where'd you play them? That is still a part of this equation, and we've got to work our way through it. In our minds, we're going to have to think about, what that looks like in terms of true road wins, and we'll have that conversation and with the staff and the committee as well.
And to your earlier point, I was talking to DePaul head coach Dave Lato. They obviously were one of the last high majors to start. And I said, at the end of the day, in March, if you end up still playing 21 games, only could play one non-conference, so you get all 20 Big East games in, will you feel like that's a full season? He said, sure, of course. And that's why I think we all have to pause and wait to judge anything, because unlike college football, in college basketball, we have time. We have almost 2 full months going forward to schedule any made-up conference games. And obviously, when you're working within the conference, you have much more flexibility to move things around within your own league to get games scheduled, and you have other open dates. And so I think we're on the same page with that the committee will look at that as well, that let's wait until all, March 13th, 14th, how many games were played. And if we get to over 20 for the majority of schools, I think that's pretty good.
Oh, I think it's outstanding. And then there's the process that we put in place as well as what gets you a qualifier to be in the tournament. It's the 13 number. And as we've talked about that number, and there's waiver processes for folks that had incredible situations. We've been as you've watched this thing unfold, I think we've been fortunate that most teams, there's been a lot of pausing, but people have been able to get back in the game, so to speak. And there has been really thoughtful scheduling done by the leagues saying, we're going to work really hard to try and find makeup dates and find ways to play games. And I think people are working at it diligently hard and really appreciate the intentionality of that. And so I think that I hope that we'll continue in that process. The pauses will be minimal, but at the end of the day, that if we can get those resumes, and Andy, I would go so far as if we get those resumes to 18 to 22 games, it's been a success and people have worked really hard. You know, you're seeing football schedules that were abbreviated to 8 to 9 to 10 games. You've got a team that's playing the national championship game that has played 6 regular season games and 7, 8, and they're on their 8th game, I think, or something like that in that zone. So the number of games doesn't necessarily have to define how good a team is, but it does help you get a resume or gives you some metrics to look at and things like that. So I want to be thoughtful about that, and I want to make sure our committee's thinking our way through. We'll have those conversations when we get in the room, but driving metrics and getting 18, 22, 23, 24 games, if you get 27, rock star effort on your part, unbelievable. But I think we'll get a really good feel for the metrics if we can get that kind of a glimpse.
And one last thing that sort of ties these two things together, the venue announcement and the net, which is when you get to actually seeding, you don't have to worry about the travel aspect, obviously, and protecting certain teams in their region because everyone's going to be in the state of Indiana. So in one sense, that'll be easier to remove that part from the committee. On the other, how much are we going to look almost like a true 1 to 68, sort of seed line, because you're not going to have to move people, based on location.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something that we're again, logistically, now that we know that we're all going to be in the state of Indiana, we know that we're going to be in quote, the bubble that everyone wants to call it. We're going to call it a controlled environment. When we know that we're in that controlled environment, now we've got a better feel for being able to say, what does that look like 1 to 68? I think it's a great point and something that Dan and I have talked about and the committee has talked about. And clearly we've got some really important meetings coming up here in the next month, leading up to our early reveal in early February, and then bringing the committee together in March. But I think that now that we've got this set aside, we can begin to focus on the task at hand about making sure that we've got this thing seated properly, and knowing that we don't have to send people and worry about flights and travel and who's got rest days. And everybody's going to be in the same spot. Once we get them here, everyone's in the same spot and we can get them to where they need to go. And so I think it takes a lot of, I'll say there's pressure still. Don't make no mistake about it. There's this person feels extreme responsibility to get this thing right as we look forward. It's a very unique tournament and very unique time, and I'm thankful. We got a really, really thoughtful, really good group of people to work with, and Dan Gavitt is the best of the best, and so thankful at his leadership and guiding us through these really turbulent times. And but I'm excited about it. The good news is we finally have a destination, Andy. We've got a destination, and back in October, no one wanted to have a destination, and Dan was thoughtful and kept saying, we've got to make sure that we keep focused on what we're trying to get to. And we've got a destination, and people are playing games and working hard at it, and kids are great performances out there. You're seeing some really fun, unique things for college basketball and some really interesting times. But it's great to watch it again on in real time, and looking forward to the tournament.
Yeah, there's no question. The quality of play, the numbers, everything's up. Which is really pleasantly surprising based on the lack of practice time and the off season. And I'll just say this, to my concluding thought is there's no asterisk. Okay. There was no asterisk for the Lakers. There's going to be no asterisk for whoever wins this tournament, because if you got through this season in a pandemic, you could argue this might have been the most difficult season to get through. So whoever wins the NCAA championship at Lucas Oil in early April in the state of Indiana will have earned it, maybe more so than any other in the past few decades.
Couldn't agree more. I think that this will be, it's one of the most challenging efforts ever. I go through the testing protocols with our teams, and I'm in there watching them, and they're faithful. The young people are faithful about coming in there and getting tested, working really hard to maintain their health, and then maintain their academics, and then maintain their athletic abilities. So if you've done that and you are standing on that dais at the end of the day on that platform and you're holding a trophy that says you won the national championship, there's no asterisk. It is an incredible effort, and be very proud of what you've accomplished.
Appreciate it, Mitch. Stay safe.
Andy, thanks so much. All the best. Happy New Year to everyone.